Well, first of all, I identify myself with your comments. I want to thank you and Co-Chair Loy. I think your hearts are definitely in the right place. I want to thank the members of this committee. We all have a lot of other things to do, but we've made a big step here. Whether we pass this out today or not, this is a continuum that started even before I got in the Senate 4 years ago. But some of you, along with other people who aren't on this committee, have been working for the last 4 years looking at why this system is so broken, what other people do, what are the best practices out there. And so this is a step that will build on that work, and there are next steps that have to build on this work. But let's focus on, there are some good things here. And in an environment where we, Democrats, Republicans, House members, and Senate, are encouraged by everybody that influences us to be divided. We got gamed here, in my opinion, in many ways, by leadership, House, Senate, Republican, Democrat. And the sooner we, as individual people, start standing up to our leadership and do what's right, we're going to have speeches like yours and disappointment like mine, that we have to wait till another day to fix what's been broken for 44 years. Let's look at what we did agree on, though, because there's some good news here. We passed 5 amendments. 3 were sponsored by Democrats. 2 were sponsored by Republicans, leading. There were amendments with Democrat and Republican cooperation. We passed the idea, the bill, the product that we have here agrees. We all agree that we need to go to biennial budgeting. We can still do that. We agree, Representative Kilmer came up with an idea that I think it was unanimous. We all agree. We need to have a state of the nation. We owe it to the people that we have to report to them the intransigence that we are involved in up here. And we can still do that. We agreed as a body, Democrats, Republicans, that we need to put tax expenditures on the line when we're talking about how we're spending the government's money, however you define what that is. Senator Schatz had that idea. He's had that idea since the first day I met him. Senator Whitehouse and I have talked about that for 4 years. Budget committee membership. The problem with the budget right now, not the budget, but our funding process, is that it's a 3-step process. Nobody else in the world, you can't find anybody else that has a 3-step process, whether it be a state, another government, or any individual corporation. Nobody does a 3-step. We do a budget, we do an authorization, and we do an appropriation. In the Senate, that will never happen. There aren't enough calendar days to do that. We have 12 appropriating committees, 16 authorizing committees. When I got to the Senate, we hadn't authorized the State Department of the United States for 13 years. Who are we kidding here? The Budget Committee needs to be made up of people who are engaged and involved in some of that authorizing and policy committee work, in my opinion. The Budget Committee Chairman of the Senate, the Republican, Mike Enzi, disagrees with that. That's a healthy disagreement, but I have a pretty strong opinion that we need to look at the membership. Senator Langford put that up. We agreed on that annual reconciliation. Senator Blunt put that forward, and I think we all agreed to that. We agreed on an optional path. Senator Whitehouse has been very strong and very constructive in driving ideas forward. We don't always agree on everything, but he and I, more than anybody else, on both sides over the last 4 years, have struggled with what to do and how to get. He's responsible, as many of us are, of how this JSC got formed. And the fact that we may or may not pass this bill out, I'm not looking at this as a defeat. This is just another step to get things done, get this done. Let me remind everybody, it took 7 years to write the Budget Act of 1974. The Budget Act of 1974 may be the worst piece of legislation, I'll be kind, that I've ever read in my life. I had it in my briefcase to bring this morning. I wanted to show it because it is something that we will always look back on as a terrible piece of American history, in my opinion. We've just started this fight, co-chairs. I believe we have an opportunity to fix this. It's not going to get fixed in this JSC, in this environment, in the Senate and the House, but I still have hope that the American people are going to force us sooner or later to fix this. And if they don't, the bondholders of the United States will force us to do this sooner or later. There are a lot of solutions. I felt like that Senator Hirono had probably the best simple objective going into this that we had heard. And that was, look, I don't know what all about this. She was very honest, but she said, I know this. Anything you come up with that would eliminate CRs, I'd be for. We didn't quite get there. We will get there eventually. We have to. But we did accomplish this year something, and I think we all need to look at this. Democrats were responsible for this just as much as Republican leadership in the majority in both the House and the Senate. So this is a bipartisan comment. Please accept it that way. But going into July 31st, we only had 12% of the discretionary budget in the United States funded this year. By the end of August, we had 75% and could have had 100% had it not been for a disagreement on border security. It's just that simple. We were that close. Why did that happen? Because we changed the process this year. We did a 2-year 3028 last year. This year, we didn't put authorizations in the Senate ahead of getting started to appropriate, and we started appropriations early. To Co-Chair Lowy's point, you know, in human endeavor, sometimes it's not the process, it's the human will to get it done regardless of the process. I agree 100%. The problem is we've only done that 4 times in 44 years. So eventually we have to fix this process. The Senate is the problem, and I believe right now that we have got to keep fighting for a politically neutral platform to fund this government, because without that, we'll never have a platform to stand on to solve this debt crisis. So I'm disappointed, Mr. Co-Chair. I want to be a yes on this. I really do. And yes, these are small steps, and yes, they do push the ball forward, but they will not achieve the objective we had for the Joint Select Committee, and that was to create a politically neutral platform to help us fund this government on time. And I do not want our colleagues in the House and the Senate, Democrat and Republican, to go home and tell people we have fixed this budget process, because we just won't. However, we have made great stride on agreement about things that we agree on, Democrat, Republican, House and Senate, that we can build on to close the gap and get this done. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair.